just come off a session with Avi, 1 hour together. It was such a great workout. Feeling stretched, I'm feeling strong. I'm definitely feeling mobile. I haven't moved my body in that many directions in a long time. And what a beautiful reminder to, move my body in all kinds of directions. Feeling super invigorated. My good friend Pronto, she had a great time as well.
Welcome to Move, Sweat, Discover, the podcast where fitness meets self-discovery. Today, we have Ryan Mannix, a mindfulness and meditation teacher, a mindset coach, and well-being facilitator. He's also a yoga instructor, leading workshops, events, classes, and teacher trainings. So before being one of Australia's most sought-after yoga instructors, Ryan was also a professional runner, representing Australia on a number of occasions. After an injury that put a pause in his running, Ryan began practicing yoga as a means of rehabilitating and did his teacher training in Bali. And the rest is history. So since then, Ryan has worked and collaborated with a multitude of different brands and organizations showing the benefits of mindfulness, meditation, and yoga. From the likes of Australian Olympic Team, the WSL Surf League of Professionals, Swimming Australia, the National Gallery of Victoria, several AFL teams, the Loom Melbourne, and alongside Lululemon, of course, being one of their Australian ambassadors. So, Ryan, a very, very warm welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. That was a brilliant introduction.
It's a bit of a "this is your life" moment for you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And it's nice to just be chatting. And I did a workout session with you the other day, and it's fantastic we can do this stuff. And you're on the other side of, not the other side of the globe, but you're many thousands of kilometers away. And Wellington is really helpful. And
3 hours away. Yeah. So I kind of came across you for the first time in a Lululemon campaign. You were across all these hoardings in Hong Kong. You did the campaign with our common connect, Rico, who was also on the podcast. And then I kind of came across your social media and was just motivated and inspired of all the things you do. So that's kind of how we, I guess, are connected. You're a strong advocate for making mental health a top priority. As I understand. What inspired you to kind of dedicate your work to supporting people in this area?
Yeah, first of all, shout out to Rico. Rico listens to this. We had a great time. That was a little shoot we did with Lululemon. We have obviously we're both ambassadors for Lululemon, and I know you've been an ambassador in the past as well. And we did a little shoot in Korea, in a place called Jeju in Korea. It was fun to see Rico. Sort of her progression from then when I first met her. I remember on the shoot, she could run a couple of kilometers, actually probably not even a couple of kilometers. And then all of a sudden, fast forward, maybe a year later, and she was running further, which is a 6-day ultra marathon. So that was an amazing.
So awesome.
Thanks to her. Shout out to Rico. And for sure, it was a fun little shoot. It was great to see some of the photos popping up, and it was awesome. Through that, we've been able to connect. So I think mental health, well-being, mindfulness, they all sort of interconnect. And I've just seen a lot of my friends and crew that I've connected with over the years sort of struggle with mental health, and it's been something that's really been, I guess, through the practice of yoga and understanding yoga and mindfulness and getting a little bit more into the depths of that sort of wisdom stream, I've been able to see how some of the practices are really helpful for modern day life, and how I was really passionate to share those practices with my friends, and then it went on to share with communities and wider communities, and now across the world, which has been really fun to do. And I think it's just really simple stuff that we can take for granted, but makes sense and you can incorporate it into your everyday life and have lots of benefit through doing so.
Yeah. How did you kind of get started or interested in that area?
Yeah, well, as you said in the intro, I was very keen on movement. Movement was my number one sort of, and I think I grew up, always moving. My dad did triathlon, and I'd always sort of see his sort of support network, and his social network was very much the triathlon club, and he'd go down, during the week and on the weekends, and be training with a little crew of friends, and just seemed like it was a fun thing to do, and not just the movement, but, just the social element of things. So I sort of got connected into movement through my dad, and it's sort of, I'd go down and chase those guys around on a Saturday morning, and then it started to unfold a little bit for me. I became a member of the school cross country team and the school athletic team, and being involved in community and having like a social, sort of having a team around me, even though running at the time was very much an individual sport, there was still a team element. We trained together and raced together and so forth. I had some success with running, and I was always in the sort of, had this sort of inbuilt capacity that if someone was inspiring me, I'd just go and hang out with those crew for a little bit. So a guy called Steve Monaghetti inspired me. He was a runner. He was Australia's best ever runner. He lived in Ballarat. So when I finished high school, I'd read all his books and thought I'd move over to Ballarat and run with Steve, and got coached by Steve Monaghetti for a few years, and that was really great. And then there was some Kenyans at the time. East African athletes were very much dominating the running scene, and I was very much inspired. I had posters of the East Africans, the Kenyan athletes on my wall in Ballarat, and ended up after university wanting to move to Kenya. So I moved over to Kenya because they were inspiring me, and sort of lived over there a little bit and ran with the Kenyans. And actually, funny story, and I've told this story before, but might be new to your listeners. I had a poster of this guy on my wall, and he was the first man to ever break 60 minutes for a half marathon. He inspired me as a runner because he had this sort of train hard mentality. He's very dedicated to his sport. He was a perfectionist with his sport. And so when I moved over to Kenya, it was very much, he was a big influence in that, wanting to go and train with these athletes. And I ended up in Nairobi and wanted to get up to Eldoret, where all the athletes were training, and didn't know where I was going to sleep, didn't know where I was going to stay. I was just going to get there and work it out. And I got there and befriended a couple of nuns in the taxi on the way up, in a 4 or 5 hour trip on the way up. And when I got there, all the hotels were closed because in Eldoret, all the hotels close at like 7 p.m. So funnily enough, the nun said, well, we know a runner. I told them my story of I wanted to run. We'll take you to his house. And anyway, we're driving through these sort of streets, and all of a sudden the streets became like palatial houses and quite big fences and big doors and big properties, and knocked on the door, and into the house I went, and there was my idol sitting on at the dinner table, and I ended up staying with him for 6 months and training with him. So it was very much I sort of went after it a little bit, and I think in life I've had a tendency to do that, and the doors have opened and had beautiful opportunities to connect with people. So running was very much my lifestyle and what I connected with. Had a running injury, so took up bike riding as a means to just rehab and also fit, and really loved the bike riding scene. I loved connecting with my friends, and we'd go off on these 6-hour rides, and it was really fantastic to, felt so free. At the same time, I got really fit. So I wanted to incorporate cycling into my endeavors. So I took up duathlon, multi-sport triathlon, and ended up representing my country a few times. Got injured, long story short, got hit by a motorbike and broke my hip.
Wow.
And then, I was 2 weeks out from World Championships, and I knew I was going to have a good performance because I'd trained hard and I'd had some good times on the board. And so that was my first sort of battle with, I guess, when I sort of came up against my mental health. Had this whole identity of being an athlete and a runner, and then all of a sudden I'm in bed with a broken hip and a doctor saying I'll never be able to run again. So my whole world and identity was sort of stripped out from under my feet, and I didn't know who I was without Ryan Mannix as an athlete. So really, I took on yoga as a means to rehab my body, and it wasn't something that I really enjoyed at the start. It was just to find stretch, and I was in rooms with all these people who touch their toes, and I bent my knees, and then there was still this competitive part of me. So I've always sort of walked out, and I felt there was something about the yoga that kind of felt it did something more than just exercise. It left me with a sense of calm presence, you might call it, or steadiness. And then I sort of took to that. I thought, this is really good. So fast forward, 14, 15 years later, and here I am teaching yoga as a full-time profession. And so yeah, that was my sort of, that's how I sort of dipped my toe into the world of yoga and meditation and mindfulness. And, it started as a physical practice, as a yoga asana practice, and then much more. But that was my first sort of, I guess, that's how I got into it at this time.
I love to hear that journey. You mentioned that when you first started yoga, that you didn't particularly enjoy it. What was the shift then that has kind of brought you from that mindset to where you are now?
Yeah, I noticed that, even when I talk to people now, like, it was quite intimidating to walk into a room and everyone it seemed like everyone knew what they were doing, and I was sort of this fish out of water, so to speak. And it's the same with meditation. We have this sort of stigma around the mind has to be empty, or, people are in this deep sense of ease, and, they've got no thoughts happening. And it's very much our own stories that sort of, I noticed it was very much my story that was talking me out of yoga and meditation. But I guess if I sort of just persevered with it, which I've tend to do in the past, I sort of just stuck with it for a little bit, and it tend to get, it seemed to get easier. Like my body started to respond, started to get a little bit more mobile and a little bit more stretch in my body, and a little bit more, my breath. I started to use my breath a little bit more in the practice, and my nervous system really started to respond well. And then, so I think it was just time in time under tension. You know how it is. Like when you first start something, it can seem quite difficult. Even running, running can seem really difficult at the start, but if you just give it a little time, the body and the mind can respond. And I think that's, just to persevere. I think there's a real merit in that. So I think it was just time that I started to enjoy it. It became easier.
It's all about that consistency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like keeping. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, consistency. I think so too. I think I'm a big believer in consistency, and the more that you sort of understand it, the more you can start to enjoy it, and you start to let the story and just start to be more present with your experience rather than that commentary, that kind of commentary that always goes along with the experience.
Yeah. So in your experience then, like break it down for us. What are some of the most like impactful strategies or practices people can implement to kind of cultivate a better mental health, and just improve their overall well-being in their daily lives?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the things is like we live in a world that's sort of fast paced, and we're all looking for, we're always searching for stimulus and, dopamine. And that's why being on social media and being on it's do that, because the mind sort of, it's chasing that next, I want to see a like on my screen. I want to look at how many people saw my post, or I want to sort of things out there. I want to sort of, I'm looking at Facebook, I'm looking at YouTube. I'm sort of always, my mind's always interacting with something. So the idea is not necessarily, and I think this is one big thing that I sort of learned early days when I started to practice meditation and mindfulness, was the fact that, people who have meditated for many, many years and many, many hours, you'd think that the concentration would be quite sharp, like the ability to stay focused for, some time. Our ability, the mind's natural ability to stay focused would be, 5-6 seconds. We can stay focused on a task, and then we have an intentional blink where our mind sort of wanders off to something else. And then people have been meditating for thousands and thousands of hours, and studies have been done on their minds and how their attention sort of wanders. And you would think that they'd be able to focus for, maybe minutes, maybe hours, but the idea is actually they can focus for maybe 7 or 8 seconds, 7 or 9 seconds. So I was like, well, what's the point of doing all these hours of meditation if I can only focus for 2 more seconds? And I guess the main point for me, and the main sort of aha moment, wasn't necessarily focusing for longer, because the mind's natural tendency is to wander. It's a survival mechanism, and it's a mechanism that's quite helpful, and it helps us be creative and so forth. But it's to notice when I'm not focused. When I'm not focused, I notice my mind often wanders off into all kinds of storylines and commentary and narrative about, what if it was like this, or maybe I'm not good enough, or, our mind is sometimes always wandering off. And a lot of the time there's a negative bias that the mind sort of wanders off into, commentary around something. So when I notice that I'm not focused, or when I notice that my mind has wandered, then it's the ability to come back to what's present right now and drop the storyline, drop the sort of the commentary. And what's present right now, life is fresh and it's open, and the storyline tends to have this sort of I want. The wanting mind is always sort of searching for something. So when I'm not focused, or when I train in meditation and mindfulness, I start to get more skillful at noticing when I'm not focused, and I can come back to the present moment where life is happening live. And I think I found that to be the most helpful part of my meditation practice, just to notice when I've gone off into the story and just pull myself back to what's happening here in this moment.
Yeah, I tend to do like a guided meditation every night. And I've been listening to the same one actually for 4 or 5 years now, actually. And my mind will wander, like I'm in bed, like the lights are off, my eyes are closed, and my mind will wander to, my to-do list, or, what's happened throughout the day. And so this guided meditation is probably about like 12 minutes, I think, or something. But for the last 5 years, because I dip in and out of like my, attention span, I always pick up new things and kind of new perspectives. And it's actually really refreshing. So it's been like 5 years and counting or something like that. And yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really helpful. If you've got a little guided meditation app or something that you can use that can just be an anchor for your mind to come back to. So as you said, your mind will wander off, and that's the mental push up. When you notice that you've gone off into your to-do list or whatever it is, then bring yourself back to the guided meditation, the voice on the phone, or it might be mindfulness of breathing, or just coming back to this moment and what's happening right now in front of us. That's the helpful part. Then we start to get more. We can change the way that the brain works a little bit. I mean, a lot of neuroscience and, obviously like neuroplasticity and so forth, we believe that the mind was, we had the brain that we had after the developmental stages of our lives. So once we hit like 4 or 5 years old, then that was our brain for the rest of our lives. And now it's shown that actually, no, we can change the way that our brain works and operates, and we can live more in the present moment rather than sort of the default mode of mind wandering all the time. So, but I have to train that, right? Just as like if I'm constantly sort of getting distracted or picking up my phone or noticing, which happens, I want to do that. I want to live in the world and sort of stay connected and stay up to date. But sometimes I sort of go for my phone when I've already gone for it like 10 seconds ago. So notice that I'm going to my phone. I'm like, actually, do I need to check this email right now, or do I need to check Instagram right now? So it's that ability to notice, the way that we behave in the world. And I think that's where meditation and what you're doing can be really helpful.
Yeah, it is challenging. It is challenging. When I was reading up on your work, you speak a lot about the power of attention. Can you explain a little bit about what that means and how like developing a greater, I guess, attentional awareness can kind of transform our relationship with our thoughts and with our emotions and like with our, I guess, our experiences?
Yeah, I think attention is a really sort of one of our greatest sort of assets and greatest commodities that we need to sort of nurture and look after. I mean, let's face it, the only thing that's sort of the only thing that's sure in life is that, we were born, and then at some point, the breath will end, and that will be it. And we don't know whether that's, in 6 hours, in 6 days, in 6 years, in 60 years, but at some point it will happen. So the idea is, life is happening right now. And the more I pay attention to life, I can start to sort of, this would be the practice of mindfulness and the miracle of mindfulness. I can start to see that, what a beautiful opportunity I have to live in the world. I've got a little daughter, and sometimes when I'm not paying attention, I miss out on the good things, I miss out on that smile, or I miss out on these developmental moments, or I can miss, the beauty of the moment when I'm not paying attention. So, and the idea is, when it's being able to train my attention. So like I said, practicing being in the moment, noticing when I'm in the moment, using meditation as a means to do that, using mindfulness as a means to do that. And, when I'm looking after this moment, the future is really crafted in this moment. So when I look after this moment, and I notice, how am I breathing, or how am I holding my body, or what's the garden of my mind look like right now? What seeds in my mind am I watering? Am I watering seeds of anger and resentment? Or if I can notice that, then if I can simply come back to what's happening now, then now is crafting what's happening next. So I can start to look after what's happening next. I can perhaps, drop the storyline, or I can slow my breathing down, or I can relax tension in my body. And when I'm paying attention to what's happening live, then that's going to help what's happening next, is the idea. So I think the power of retention is a really important quality that we all can and should nurture. And, I see, as I spoke to at the very start, I've had a lot of friends that have struggled with mental health, and I've even had a lot of friends, even last year, that, you know, couldn't cope with their mental health and ended up to end their life. And I work a lot with Movember, who's a men's charity, and they do a lot for suicide prevention and so forth. And when we get really caught up in our storyline, and maybe there's a negative storyline that's happening, or and we're not really, our attention is so caught up in that we can't really see clearly. We're seeing life through the filter of our story. And I think that's really, it can be quite harmful. We can sort of do things that we shouldn't, that we might not mean to. We can say things that we don't mean to say. We can do things that we don't mean to do, and we're not really paying attention fully. We're just paying attention to one aspect of the story. So if I can notice my storyline, if I can notice my body, if I can notice my mind, then through the power of attention, I can start to cultivate the next moment. I can cultivate seeds of kindness, or I can cultivate seeds of relaxation, or I can cultivate seeds of empathy or compassion. So I think noticing and strengthening attention is a really useful skill, and something that, as I said, life is pretty short, and it's really cool to just be here and now.
Yeah. You touched upon Movember, men's mental health. Can you talk a little bit more about I guess the stigma around men in that space?
Yeah, I guess, hopefully, I think the stigma we're sort of breaking through these days of it's the idea of the old school approach of men are meant to be this strong, sort of powerful character that don't men are not meant to get upset, or men are meant to have sort of emotions, or not meant to be sad, or meant to feel depressed, or that we're always meant to be leaders and in charge and in control of our emotions. I guess the idea of being human, and it's a shared experience, female, male, however you identify. Life isn't monotone; it has depth and color, and we have all kinds of we experience. There's the highs, and there's the lows, and there's the sadness, and there's the joy. And when we can get in touch with our emotions, and sometimes it's easier to talk to people about our emotions, to get in touch with our own emotions. So rather than sort of push things down and not say things, when I can start to have conversations around how I'm feeling, or what I'm experiencing, or emotions that might be present. And most of the time with men, if you look at suicide, some of the main reasons that men commit suicide, which is, big percentage of young men take their own lives, it's due to the fact that, there's something, a big event that's happened in their life. They have a breakup, or they lose their job, and this can be a real big shock to the system. And we get caught up in the storyline. We sort of push it down. We try and put on a brave face, and we don't want to sort of tell our friends that we're struggling, or, we want to look brave, or we want to look strong in front of people. So we sort of push our emotions down, and we don't talk about it. But actually, in the talking about it is a nice chance to sort of just be with what's present, just to be with our experience, because it's happening. This is my experience. So to be able to talk about it and experience it and feel it and share and have and notice that there's we have this common sort of this common human aspect, that we all have this kinds of emotions, and someone might be feeling the same emotions. We can talk about it. Really helps people when they're in that place of preventing them to take the next step into perhaps self-harm, or isolating themselves or not talking to people, looking themselves away, or and you know, the extreme taking their own life. So I think what Movember does really well is it sort of just brings to the forefront the idea that, you know, talking to a friend or ringing a friend up and saying, hey, how are you today? Or, you know, what's going on? Just talking and sharing how we're feeling. And it might feel vulnerable, but, you know, sharing perhaps negative emotions or emotions that are coming up and just being really real with your life. I think it's really helpful to not only for yourself, but also for others. You know, when I can connect with myself, I allow other people to connect with themselves as well and have that shared experience.
I've found in my experiences that sometimes it takes maybe not two, but maybe three or four kind of touch points to connect with somebody. You know, are you okay the first time? Yes, I'm fine. You know, how are you doing the second time? Yes, I'm fine. And then the third time, you know, when you kind of cracked the surface a little bit, and then people feel a little bit more safe and more open to kind of, you know, share and be vulnerable. I want to talk about how many people struggle, because I feel like it's almost like rooted in the sense of like your grounding. And I want to talk about like how people struggle with that, with like the sense of calm with grounding, especially in our, as you mentioned before, like in our kind of chaotic modern life where we're, you know, with our smartphones, all we want to do is stay connected, yet that little device kind of disconnects us all a little bit more, so to speak. So tell me about your kind of like work with that and like your workshops and breathwork actually even.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the big things, you know, that we look at, I guess, in breathwork or mindfulness meditation, where you look at the brain or anything like that, I think one of the things that we look at is, you know, just how to bring it to life in the modern day world, not to sort of necessarily, you know, look at how to bring ancient practices to life in a modern day world where it is fast paced and we're always on the go and there's high expectation and the workload, perhaps, you know, we always have our work with us now. Like I carry my phone around. I can always check my emails. There's never really a time to switch off. So I'm always contactable. People are messaging me on different platforms like WhatsApp or Instagram or Facebook, or they'll call me or text me. So there's all this sort of stimulus all the time. And is always sort of on the blink. It's here, it's there, it's kind of everywhere. So I guess what, you know, one really big benefit of breath work or meditation or just mindfulness in, you know, on a broad brushstroke, is the ability just to be with the present moment. And in the present moment, life is just happening. There's no to do, there's no it's, and in yoga, if you were to explain it as a yoga sort of term, is just the quality of remembering being, just to remember being just here, like being, life is happening. Rather than, you know, got to do this, got to do that. That's happened, you know, constantly the mind's sort of here, there and everywhere. So one of the nice things about mindfulness and breath work is it teaches us to be in the present moment, the here and the now. So breath work can also be a really nice doorway into the nervous system. So through the lens of breathing, I can start to regulate my own nervous system. I can, you know, breath work has been shown to regulate blood pressure. It's been shown to regulate my heart rate, my HRV, all of these sort of things when I look at it from a scientific lens. But just in general, looking at it from, you know, just the lens of practicing every day, you know, I can use my breath as an opportunity to regulate my own nervous system. And that's a really beautiful skill to have. You know, when I notice that perhaps in a peak moment of life when I'm really busy, if I'm noticing that my tension level is going up and, you know, and my mind feels really scattered, then if I have the tools like breath work in my tool bag, I can pause, take a moment just to notice my body, like you said, ground, be in the present moment, feel my hip bones on the ground, just to be on the spot, feel my body in space, notice my breathing, and then perhaps even make my breath a little deeper and a little longer. What I've found is most people will breathe, when you ask them how they're breathing, they're kind of breathing up here, up in the chest. As we breathe in, our lungs expand and our diaphragm moves down. And you might feel that when your belly sort of expands with breathing. If you kind of chest breathe, our diaphragm can move around 10 centimeters, depending on the length of your torso. But let's say I was always chest breathing, my diaphragm might move about 1 centimeter every day. So I'm just breathing up here in the chest. And actually, when I start to breathe a little bit more into belly. I mean, it's always diaphragmatic breathing because my diaphragm's always moving. But when I bring my breath down a little bit, that can have a really beautiful influence on lots of things. The vagus nerve, it can have an influence on my heart rate, on all of these bioreceptors in my body that regulate, as I said, blood pressure and so forth. So just by simply bringing my breath down a little bit, it sends a message to my nervous system to say, actually, I'm safe, can relax a little bit. And it's a really great way to regulate your own nervous system just by simply slowing and lengthening breathing. And that might feel really at the start, because if I constantly chest breathe, it's going to feel really sort of foreign to breathe a little deeper and a little slower, and it might feel forced. But I guess the key word is to do it gently, incrementally, just start to deepen and slow breathing down. And that's a really beautiful practice. Wake up in the morning, put the kettle on. So when the kettle's boiling, it might take, 20 seconds, depending how much water's in the kettle. Just sit in a chair rather than go on and multitask and get on, do an email or go and wash the dishes or whatever it is. While the kettle's boiling, just sit in a chair and can I just gently slow my breathing down? Can I deepen my breath a little bit until the kettle flicks, and then off I go, and I've had, 20 seconds of mindfulness. And it's, I guess, by default, I'm working it into my everyday lifestyle rather than trying to meditate for 20 minutes a day, or trying to, I feel like trying to, and I have this sort of time measured experience, and it sort of runs out of steam pretty quick. There's too many things in the day to do, and trying to do 20 minutes of meditation in the day sometimes gets in the way of all the other things that I need to do.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. I was actually going to be my kind of next question, that like for someone who is new to breathwork or even yoga, for example, like what are some of the first steps you would do to kind of recommend that they kind of implement these practices in a sustainable way?
Yeah, I think, a really nice book. I mean, it's nothing new. It's just in a book, but habit stacking, put some things on top of. So for instance, when we did our little session the other day, you do, I remember I wanted to get better at doing handstands in yoga. It's kind of like gymnastics. It is a posture in asana. But I was like, I want to get better at doing handstands. How am I going to get better at doing handstands? Well, I've got to practice. So every time I taught a class, and it might have been, 15 classes a week, before the class started, I'd get in there like 20 minutes before to set the room up. And as you do as a trainer, you do this, and you get in there and make sure everything's in the right place and ready to go for the students when they come in. I'd get in there and I'd just do a handstand for 1 minute on the wall every day. Go and do a 1 minute handstand on the wall. Got a little stronger. So if I was doing 4 classes a day, I'd be doing 4 handstands in the day. And then over the weeks, months, I just started to get a little bit better at getting off the wall, and until I could do a 1 minute handstand in the middle of the room. So I think, when we look at the way that we can improve things, and we all sort of have endeavors to improve something, it might be lifting weights, or it might be, and it's the same with meditation and mindfulness. And, a lot of emphasis, I guess, is placed on the body. And this was sort of, when it showed one of the big studies and the big sort of moments, and in the 70s and 80s, why aerobics became so popular was because a lot of the studies showed that through aerobic fitness, aerobic training, I can really increase my longevity and reduce my risk of cardiovascular disease and things like that. So this is the same as meditation and mindfulness, just with a little bit of practice. And it's tricky because everyone sort of goes for the aesthetics these days. I want to look good and I want my body to be in shape and so forth. But sometimes we neglect one of the most important things, which is our mental health. And, the same studies have shown that by strengthening the muscle of the mind can have, profound impacts on the way I sort of see the world, the way I live in the world, my mental health, my longevity in terms of, when I'm happier. It showed that, you look at the blue zone countries, the countries that are calmer, less stressed, more happy, they also have a tendency to live longer. So our mental health also correlates with our longevity and this whole sort of, I guess this new sort of new age approach of living longer and living better and feeling better when we're older. So I think mental health has a big sort of role to play in that. So by practicing meditation little and often, and I think, putting in place, for me, it helps if I'm just starting out. I always sort of say to people starting out, do it at the start of the day. If I plan to do some meditation during the day, that's totally great. But do it at the start of the day, because if I plan for later on, I usually get busy later on. Something comes up, something spontaneous. Hey, my friends invite me for lunch. That sounds more exciting than sitting on a stool doing meditation for minutes. I'll tend to go and sort of take the second option rather than meditation. So don't plan to fail, do it when you first wake up. And it might be I sit in the chair and I get my position right and sort of feel my body in space. And then I slow down and lengthen my breath. My mind will wander off. That's the tendency, the nature of the mind is to wander off. And then when I notice it wanders off, I just come back to feeling my breathing. And I might go through that 5, 6, 7 times. Mind wanders, come back to breathing, or even more. And then my timer rings, 3 or 5 minutes is up, and I get on with the rest of my day. And just a small little increment, like 3 minutes, can have a really large benefit for the rest of the day. To feel more present, to notice when my mind's wandered, to notice when I'm off in story again, to notice when I'm not focused at work, or, when I want to pick up my phone. Well, maybe I don't need my phone right now, and things like that. And then there's other little steps that we can do, like, if you walk into the post office and there's a long line, rather than pick up your phone, get on your phone, maybe we have the self-awareness just to stand still and relax a little bit, slow breathing down, take a moment just to, can't go anywhere, so I may as well look after my nervous system for this little moment, because as soon as I get to the front of the queue and I do my thing at the post office, then I'm on with the rest of my day. So when I have these little pauses, maybe there's a red light in traffic and it's like a moment just to stop. It's like a little moment, a reminder to stop, relax the shoulders, slow breathing down. So you can start to look for little moments where life's saying stop. But when life says stop, we always look for something else to do. I get to just, I'm going to do my email right now, and multitask. But these little reminders, a red light, a line in the post office or the supermarket, might be an additional little mindful moment that you have during the day, rather than, accumulate more sort of busyness in the mind.
I'm curious if you ever had a aha moment in your kind of practices where you were kind of that voice that kind of just keeps you consistent.
Yeah, I'd always used to, try to, definitely sort of hung out in meditation crowds a lot, and I'd gone to trainings and studies, and I'd listen to people share about their meditation experience. It was very much, wow, had this out of body experience, or I'll see color, this ecstatic experience. And for me, that was never happening. I was like, I feel like I'm doing it wrong. Why am I paying all this money to come into these sort of meditation retreats? And I'd speak to a good friend of mine, Chris, and I'd ring him up and I'd say, mate, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And I think when I started to realize that it's not it's not necessarily like this aha moment, like this sort of one moment that encapsulates everything. Slow, progression, when I start to actually practice little increments through the day, and I, get consistent through the week and through the months and through the years, I notice that actually when I don't meditate, I get frustrated, I'm reactive, I'm judgmental, I criticize, I'm tense. So I guess, there's never really been an aha moment where I'm like, wow, I spoke to God or something, like that happened for me. And nor is it a goal, but I've just noticed that when I do it consistently, I feel good. And when I don't do it, that's the reference to show that actually meditation really helps. And it's not like the gym, because when I go to the gym and I lift weights, as you know, you can look in the mirror and you're like, actually, my body's starting to change. Look at my pecs and my biceps are, you can start to see the change. But with meditation, it's really, really subtle. You don't necessarily see the changes like you would see in the gym. You only notice the changes when you stop and you realize the person
That's so true.
When you stop,
Yeah. For me personally, I was going through a really rough time a few years back, and someone said to me, they were kind of trying to support me and trying to comfort me, and they said, you just need to self-care the shit out of yourself. And those words were just like in the comic books, like a bubble that just like hung over my head in that period. And whenever I find myself like, getting a little bit, when I fall off my practice and I find myself getting a little bit judgmental or a little bit irritable, those words are kind of just like hanging over my head, and I'm always reminded of that. So for me personally, that's like my kind of like little cheeky reminder, I guess, that that I am important and that I need to reset and that I need to kind of take care of me.
Yeah, so true. I mean, if you're not looking after yourself and you sort of, not in a way that's greedy, this sort of stuff, you're doing it for the team as well. Like, you
Sure.
see
Yeah.
because it's good for your next interaction or your crew at work or the people that you lead at work or your clients or your family when you go home and you around your family, you're more present with them, you're less reactive, you're more empathetic, you're more compassionate. And I notice when I don't meditate, I have a tendency to criticize or judge, like I was saying before, and through the practice of meditation, I can start to cultivate the garden of my mind. I'm noticing that actually, this storyline keeps coming up, and I can practice things like loving kindness meditation, like, may I be happy, may I be happy. And then I can start to see, may you be happy. And to the degree that I can be happy is the degree that I can wish that you can be happy. And the opposite would be, why did you get the job promotion? Why didn't I get the job promotion? But if I can cultivate seeds of kindness and happiness within my own life, then I'm happy for other people that do well, and rather than sort of be like, well, what about me? Or why not me? Or, so I can start to actually live in the joy of life and notice that things are pretty good.
Can you share any kind of experience that you've had that kind of highlights these mind and body disciplines?
An experience that highlights mind body disciplines. I mean, I think just the way that we sort of, just to be, I've hung out with the one thing about yoga and meditation and mindfulness is I've met some amazing characters in my time, who are just kind. They're just nice people. And it's not from a place of I want or I need. It's just from a place of they're so just content and steady and easy, and they're just a nice person. They're lovely and easy to be around. And I think, for me, that's always sort of the blueprint. I just want to be a good person. And the practice of meditation and mindfulness, and yoga and being in community and running and being a part of things that are bigger than me, it pulls me out of this sort of individualism that I can live in. Hey, everyone, look at me. What's in it for me? Get out of my way. I'm best. And I start to sort of recognize other, and I can start to see the world that I'm living in, and I can start to see you, and I can start to see people on the other side of the world, and I can start to see all the animals, and I can start to see the planet that I live on, and I just want to be a good person. That's my motivation for meditation. So when I notice that I'm more calm and I'm more kind to myself, then I can be more calm and kind to other people. So I guess, the way I connect meditation, mindfulness, body, spirit, all these practices is just the way I sort of live in the world. And I'm just trying to be a good person, to be honest. I just try and be a good person. I can add to the aggression in the world, or I can add to the peace in the world. And we all want to add to the peace in the world, but sometimes the way that we sort of show up for ourselves or show up for each other doesn't really add to the peace in the world. When I get too much in my way, like, hang on, I want this, but I've got that, or why that? I need this, or I want more. I tend to sort of add to the aggression in the world. Get out of my way. Why is that person doing that? I'm better than that person, so forth and so on. So I think, this moment to moment awareness and just living in the world and having a sort of the North Star of just be a good person, do the right thing. I think that's the power of meditation, and that's what it's all about. It's not necessarily winning a gold medal in focusing longer, or noticing when you're not focusing, or, holding the breath for as long as you can. Or I think what we're trying to do here is just to peel away all this sort of me culture and just sort of see each other, be able to sort of be in relationship with each other in a way that's really kind and compassionate.
You've mentioned connection a few times since we've been talking. What does connection and community mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason I still do yoga and teach yoga. I think it's, and like you train people, I think, when you have a community around you, you feel connected to something that's bigger than you. And people need people. Like you said, we live in a world
Absolutely.
that we've got all these devices and we're so connected, yet we feel we're living in apartments. And I mean, even in I guess where you live, that we're living in density these days. We're on top of each other, but you're still the likelihood of loneliness and isolation is going to feel lonely and isolated. We can sort of be really disconnected from each other. So I think the ability to be in community, and whether it's a run group or a training squad or a yoga class, or just to have some people around you that um, are all doing the same thing and show up in the morning and put their shoes on and come for the same purpose, for movement or for arts and craft or whatever, just to be in community with other people. I think it's really helpful because that's when we can be the best version of ourselves. We help each other, we support each other. That's why I love fun runs. I always sort of back in fun runs and I'm like, wow, I can be out here and strangers that don't even know me cheering me on. People are wanting the best for me, and I'm giving high fives over the finish line. And I don't even know these people. And the opposite is true. When I'm in this individualism and me culture, I'm sitting in traffic, I'm on my horn, get out of my way, I'm late. Like it's this whole sort of different side of the coin. So I think being in community, knowing people and supporting people through their struggles and whatever it is, I think it's really helpful. I think it happiness and happiness doesn't come from getting stuff, buying t-shirts and getting a big house and a fancy. I mean, it's cool. Like I want that stuff too, but deep happiness, lasting happiness, the things that we remember, I think, are the run crews, the exercise groups, the connection, the interactions that we have, and the relationships that we build through our life, not necessarily the stuff that we get. So I think that gives us the most joy.
Let's talk about movement. And you mentioned you've been a runner, you did some cycling, you do your regular yoga practice. What have you learned about yourself through movement over the years?
Yeah, I mean, hey, by the way, I really enjoyed your class the other day. One thing that I took away from the class was I have a rigidity in the way that I train. Like I go to the gym, and yoga can be quite linear. Like we move in a pattern, sort of front and back and forward and straight. And like we have these lines and so forth. And in the gym, I'm lifting weights and I'm on machines and so forth. What I loved about your training, and it reminded me, one word that came up was play, like just to be able to sort of, felt like I was very mobile and we're moving in all kinds of directions, and I felt strong and I felt like stretched, but I also felt playful, and I felt like really super mobile. So for me, that was a really nice reminder of the fact that actually move my body in all kinds of directions and don't get stuck in these linear patterns. And so I'm constantly learning about myself I guess one thing that I've learned would be just to be more connected to my own physical body. So I guess, be able to feel my own body in space, like proprioception and so forth. I noticed that through movement, and whether it's running or yoga, I've been more capable at like noticing how I'm holding myself, my posture and so forth. Like I noticed that, as a trainer or as a yoga teacher, I have this idea that, everyone should should feel themselves. I take for granted that, people can feel things, but some people can go through them all day and not really feel anything, could feel quite numb. So even just rubbing the hand on their shoulder might be a new experience for them. So yoga has really given me, and movement has given me, a deep sort of sense of myself, my body, and feeling connected to my body. Notice when perhaps, I have a little niggle and when to pull back, or notice, where I need to feel stronger or more stretched, or how my lifestyle, I drive a lot up and down the coast. So, when I drive too much, I notice I get quite tight in my lower back. And so it's given me a nice reference point to my own physical body. And then I guess it's given me more of an understanding of my subtle body, my breathing, getting a little bit more subtle with emotions. And, I can start to experience myself. I can feel emotions. Like, let's say, for instance, I'm feeling nervousness, I can notice that actually is a feeling in my belly and it feels contracted or tight, or feeling the sense of joy. And I can start to feel, I notice that happens like up here in my chest and I feel quite open. So I can get more and more subtle with my emotions. And that, I feel like that's quite helpful to notice, the deeper layers of yourself. And it might start
Absolutely.
with the physical body. So movement for me is giving me a greater experience of my body. And I guess this is the vehicle, I guess, that I experience life through. So, when I eat poor food and when I sleep poorly or when I don't exercise and train, I don't feel so good. So I noticed that actually by doing that stuff, I'm a better person in the world. So, movement and eating well and sleep and feeling my body, has given me great tools to be a better person in the world.
We talked a little bit off mic earlier on how many movement sessions you get in a day. I think we're pretty similar in that we move quite often, and that like movement is like our happy place. Maybe just run me through like a day of movement for you.
Yeah, I love movement. I mean, I was a school teacher before I was a yoga teacher, and I was a PE teacher, and I used to always like run sessions for the school. Students would do weight sessions and run sessions. So I feel like a day, and then I'll do my own training around that. So even today, like, I woke up and I got to the studio pretty early and I taught a yoga class, and then had some time between the yoga class. I went down to the beach and, I ran for 7 kilometers and then had a swim in the ocean, and then went back and taught another yoga class. And then I went straight from there to the gym and I worked out for, an hour in the gym. And then, I went and filmed a yoga class. So I practiced my own yoga for, 45 minutes. And then tonight I'll link up with some friends and go for another 40-minute run. So I think, I'm at the level where I'm fit. So movement doesn't necessarily feel fatiguing as much as it does. It feels like a social outlet, or it feels engaging, and I'm quite comfortable to move all the time because I do it so regularly. And I know that could be a stretch for people, moving as much as that in the day, but I think the more you do it slowly and incrementally, the more your body sort of adapts to it. And it's not necessarily doing these big sessions where you sort of fatigue yourself every day. It's like lots of sessions through the day and feeling really good with that and feeling really capable. And also I know my body, if I'm tired, I'll definitely back it
Yeah.
off, or, but at the moment I'm feeling pretty good. So when I'm feeling good, if I'm on holidays, if I've got time on my hands, I'll be training. That's like a holiday for me. Like go and do
I'm the
training.
same. I'm the same. I can't stop. It's like my non-negotiable. Like I just have to move. You touched.
You feel good, right? Like you feel good
Yeah.
after, and you feel good during it, and it's just a part of you. It's part of your life that you've realized that. Well, for me, and I'm sure it's for you as well. It's you realize that this sort of stuff, makes you sort of feel alive, and I want to feel alive in my life.
Yeah. You touched upon the session that we did. So we did one of my classes, the family form sculpt class the other day. Was there anything that you learned new about yourself from that session?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, you guys were doing it in like, it's summer over here, so I have to preface that it was like maybe 32 degrees, but it wasn't 32 degrees in my house. I was doing it in my house, and I was looking at you guys in the studio, and what was it, like 40 degrees or something? Because you guys were sweating, and I was like, wow, these guys are going for it. I don't know how you could be doing that at 40 degrees. So hats off to you. Very, very, it was a great workout, great session. What did I learn about that session? Yeah, going back to what I was saying, I think, I want to move well when I'm 70, 80, 90 years old. I want to, I'm all about living for as long as I can, and but I want to move well when I'm old. I want to be able to move well when I'm 60, 70, 80, 90. And I think sessions like what you did on Thursday, it was Friday, but the session that you did was a good reminder, and move body in all directions, being mobile and fit mobile, strong and mobile. I think it's really healthy rather than get caught up. When I was just a runner, I don't think it was very healthy. I was just running. Like I didn't do any movement outside of just running linear. Yeah. And I don't think that was a very healthy movement pattern. I mean, definitely it was great for my cardiovascular system and my heart and, circulatory system. But in terms of like my movement body, my movement patterns, the mates that had just ran, I noticed now their posture isn't great. They've got sore knees, they're stiff, they have injuries. So the way that you moved last week, it was just, it was a beautiful reminder that like, if I don't move my body, I'm going to lose it. So move my body all because it's really healthy and it can keep me moving well for the rest of my life.
I love that. What was something that you learned about me?
What is something that I mean, we haven't known each other so long, but
No.
I'm very, very much appreciate your friendliness when you it's kind of like we haven't known each other, but you just have this just friendly character that it's easier to connect with you, and you should, resonate with what I'm saying in that session. As I said, we hadn't met each other before, but only online. But I've turned the camera on, and it was like you were my trainer, and I listened to what you're saying and followed along, and I didn't feel like you were judging me or trying to it wasn't boot camp or you weren't trying to yell at me or anything. And it was a friendly, you created a really friendly atmosphere, and I think that comes from you being quite comfortable with yourself and confident with you seem to know your craft very well. So I think when you know your craft very well and you're planned and you're prepared, that comes across in a way that's quite comforting for the students. I know opposite would be, when you're not planned and you're not prepared and you're sort of starting out, you don't have that sort of friendliness. You're trying to overthink everything. But what I learned was you're quite organized and confident in what you do, and that comes across in a way that's quite friendly and relaxed.
Thank you. I learned about you from what I could see on the screen. Again, like you mentioned, that we don't know each other. We've never met in person, but and it's interesting that we did touch upon connection, but I felt that you were very connected with yourself. And that kind of did really come across. It came across obviously in our conversation today, but it came across even through the screen. I could see at the back through all the sweat just dripping from my eyeballs. You were very connected to your own body. And I also noticed that you are someone that kind of, you'll watch and then you'll proceed. And obviously that's just the kind of nature of the class. But I feel like that's probably something that that's something that kind of translates into your regular life as well. What would you say, that's a fair assessment?
Yeah. And the good thing about your session, which I really loved, was like you have, let's say we did one movement pattern and some of them were quite complex and you're quite small on my, so I had to sort of look at the pattern, and the good thing about the class was you repeated the pattern like 10 sometimes times, and it was just repetition of the pattern, and we'd move to another pattern and would sort of progress and add on. It was kind of like layering each time. So sometimes I was like, hang on, what's he doing there? That's sort of, and it was almost like a skill in coordination as much as it was. So there was definitely some mind aspect where I had to sort of coordinate my body, which was really helpful. So I think watching a bit, and I was like, oh, okay, so he's doing that. That's his left foot. Yep, I got it. And then I'd get the pattern, and it was like, yep, we're doing it. This is good. Felt really good.
Yeah. I was moving at a moderate pace on purpose.
Yeah.
So we are winding up our time here today, but we do like to kind of do a little go-to lightning round to kind of round off our little chat. So 10 questions. Don't think too much about it. Just like kind of the first thing that comes to your head. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. What's your go-to self-care ritual?
Running.
Nice. I like it. Do you prefer to run outdoors or indoors?
Always outside. Yeah, I live near the
Always
beach.
outside.
My dog, it's like freedom. It's such a beautiful experience.
What is your go-to sweat, your go-to workout?
At the moment, gym. I'm really addicted to, only because it's quite new. So it's like, yoga, and it's really finding it's really helping my yoga asana, and really, so that's why I was like excited for your session, and actually have incorporated some of that stuff.
Oh, nice. Go to treat meal.
Oh, treat meal, pizza.
Do you like anchovies on a pizza?
No, no. I used to. I'm vegetarian, so nah.
Okay.
But pizza, I'd say that's my treat meal. I live with my partner's a nutritionist, so we don't really eat that much
Okay.
pizza. When I get out with my mates and they say, "What do you want to eat?" Pizza.
And how do you feel about pineapple on a pizza?
Yeah, I'm all right with pineapple on the
Okay.
pizza.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
We can still be friends. Go to travel destination.
Southeast or like Asia.
Whereabouts?
Um, Bali. I really like. Bali, Japan,
Okay.
Korea, Hong Kong.
Yeah,
And
it's all good.
yeah, it's all good. Like Bali for sure. Thailand. Bali, it's just close. It's like not too far out of the way. Time zone's the
Yeah.
same. Beautiful weather. Food's amazing. People are great.
Have you been to Siargao, an island from the Philippines?
No.
Okay, I recommend. I recommend. It's like Bali before Bali became Bali, if that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Go to life motto or mantra.
Very good. Big comment.
Love it. Go to morning or evening routine.
Morning routine. Um, always make my bed. Get out of bed. Make my bed. Scrape my tongue. So it's like a, detox oil pull. So coconut oil, swish it around my mouth for a minute, and then drink some water. And always move before I eat. Always get out and move.
Uh, and go to app.
Go to app, Spotify or YouTube.
Okay, so that links very well into my next one. What's your go-to music playlist?
Music play. It's all kind of like very chill these days. Acoustic chill, really relaxing. Although every now and again I'll put like some kind of just kind of acoustic. I'd say acoustic music.
Okay, is that kind of representative of what you play in your classes? Because I feel like for trainers and instructors, like my Spotify playlist is just pretty much what I'm playing in class.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say sometimes I don't play any music and it's like reverse of like how we live in the world, like it's always something on. And sometimes when there's space,
Yeah,
it's like this is different. This seems different. What's going on? I'll play music, but it'll be like really gentle sort of acoustic, not with much sort of singing or vocals or words. Really
yeah.
sort of calming stuff. But then there's part of me that wants to, when I run, listen to something a bit more upbeat, like we were doing in your class.
Yeah. What is your go-to recovery practice?
Um, cold water immersion. I really like, leaving it a bit that, or like cold showers, breathwork.
Do you do cold plunges?
Not regular. I mean, cold plunge. If you come down, if you ever visit Australia, come and stay with me in Torquay. There's a room here for you, mate, at any point.
Nice, thank you.
So we'll go down to the beach, which is only a couple 100 meters away, and that'll be a cold plunge for sure. Yeah.
Okay, last one is your go-to meditation method.
Mindfulness meditation. So anchoring on breathing. So noticing my breath and just being there and present for my breath and just being with life as it's happening in the present moment.
Love it. So what is next for you?
What is next? I mean, hopefully a bit more travel this year. I'd love to. Got a little 2-year order, so we want to travel a little bit, and got a little retreat in Bali that I'm running. Got a teacher training in a couple of weeks. Lots of teacher training, so teaching other teachers that are newer and so forth this year will be big on the agenda, and then travel, working obviously with Lululemon. So we'll have some things on the horizon. And sometimes it's quite spontaneous. So I'm looking forward to the spontaneity of things as well.
For sure. So how do people find you?
They can link up with me on Insta. I was going to say Spotify. Well, you could definitely, if you want something smoother than chill, Ryan Mannix on Spotify. Otherwise, Ryan Mannix on Instagram would be a go-to. Feel free to send me a message. Or I also have a little online studio called It's All Yoga. And there's lots of classes from Vinyasa to Yin to Mellow. lots of meditation, lots of breath work. So you can always find me on It's All Yoga online.
Love it. Is that your dog in the background?
I've got a Kelpie. It's an Australian cattle dog. Yeah, she's great. She's 4 years old and she comes everywhere with me. She's my best mate. Yeah, that is.
Cute.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. This has been an absolute pleasure. I love your energy so much, and I'm really glad that we connected and that we've had this hour or so to kind of chat and share this with the world.
Yeah, amazing. And also thanks for, taking the time. And it takes a lot to run a podcast. And I think, when I listen to podcasts, I don't see everything that goes behind the scenes and all of the emails back and forth and all of the setup and so forth. So appreciate you doing all the background work and getting me here today.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thanks.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us on Move, Sweat, Discover. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.